At 01:30 local time on November 9, 2025, 44 Ukrainian drones, designated Palyanitsia, slipped across the border into Russian airspace. Their composite wings, granting a radar cross-section smaller than a large bird, were cruising at 100 meters. Engines running cold, fuel gauges still mostly full. Everything seemed normal over the frozen fields of Belgorod Oblast. Inside a Russian command bunker, a radar operator monitoring the Kasta 2E2 radar system was halfway through a cup of cold coffee. The Kasta is Russia's premier low-altitude surveillance radar, a VHF system designed specifically to find invisible targets like stealth aircraft. Suddenly, his screen lit up. 44 contacts had materialized from nowhere, already inside Russian airspace. This wasn't a patrol, it was a swarm. The target data was fed instantly to a Panzer S-1 battery protecting the city. The Panzer is Russia's goalkeeper, a last line of defense designed to protect high-value assets. Think of it as the bodyguard in soccer, the last line when everything else fails. It combines 57 E6 missiles for long-range interception and twin 30mm cannons for close-in defense. The lead Panzer operator locked onto the nearest target, now 10 kilometers out. A 57 E6 missile, a $100,000 weapon, erupted from its tube. It streaked into the night, its booster separating as it raced toward the $15,000 drone. A brief fireball confirmed the kill, but this is where the Ukrainian plan exploited Russian doctrine. The Panzer operates on a shoot-look-shoot philosophy. It fires one missile, sees if it hits, confirms the kill, reacquires a new target, and fires again. This maximizes accuracy against a single, sophisticated target like a cruise missile. It is a disaster against a crowd. As the operator was confirming his kill, his system was reacquiring. But 5 more drones, flying in a loose, unpredictable formation, had already slipped past his 10-kilometer engagement bubble. The Panzer's twin 2A38M 30mm cannons roared to life. This system works by creating a beaten zone, firing 5,000 high-explosive rounds per minute to fill a cube of airspace with so much lead that anything flying through it should be shredded. But the drones were small, the night was dark, and the targets were scattering. He was shooting at ghosts. At 01:47, the first drone hit its target. The Belgorod 330 substation erupted in a brilliant blue-white flash. The drone's 20-kilo warhead wasn't a simple explosive. It was a shaped charge. Its job was not to flatten the building, but to inject a jet of molten copper, moving at 8 kilometers per second through the reinforced steel casing of the main transformer. A cascade failure began instantly. Lights across 20,000 homes flickered and died. 100 kilometers to the east, a different kind of war was beginning. As a dozen drones approached the Voronezh 1 substation, a Russian R-330 Zhitel electronic warfare system activated. The Zhitel is a $20 million truck-mounted marvel. It doesn't shoot, it lies. The Zhitel's attack is a two-step process. First, it floods the entire GPS frequency spectrum with overwhelming high-power static. This initial blast of radio noise drowns the faint real signals coming from satellites, causing the drone's GPS receiver to lose its lock. The drone is suddenly blind, unable to determine its position. Second, the Zhitel stops the static and immediately begins transmitting its own signal. This new signal is a perfect digital imitation of a real satellite transmission, but thousands of times stronger. It contains fabricated false positioning and timing data. The drone's receiver, programmed to lock onto the strongest, clearest signal it can find, immediately latches onto the Zhitel's powerful lie. The drone's navigation computer then performs its calculations, but using the false data. It calculates its own position as being 50 kilometers off course. On the Russian EW operator's screen, his intercept equipment showed the attack was working. He could see the drones begin correcting themselves. The autopilot, believing it was lost, banked hard to follow the phantom GPS coordinates. One by one, they nosedived into empty, frozen fields or were easily snagged by the waiting Panzer systems that were positioned in their new, fake corridor. The operator marked 11 targets as neutralized, a clean sweep, but one drone in the swarm kept flying straight. This drone wasn't listening to the lie. It was flying on memory. Its guidance system was a hybrid, blending two components, a basic inertial navigation system, INS, and terrain contour matching, TERCOM. the INS. A simple set of gyroscopes kept it flying in a straight line. But an INS is dumb. It drifts, accumulating small errors with every second of flight. After 30 minutes, it would be hopelessly lost. That's where the TERCOM came in. The drone's simple radar altimeter wasn't just checking its height. It was pinging the ground, creating a 2D slice of the earth below. The drone's computer was comparing that slice, every hill, every valley, every riverbed, to a 3D topographic map stored in its memory. The INS was its muscle, keeping it flying. The TERCOM was its eyes, constantly checking the map to correct the drift. The Zhitel's powerful lie was rewriting the sky, but it couldn't change the shape of the ground. At 0152, that one drone, having slipped past the multi-million-dollar Russian EW bubble, flew its 20 kilos warhead directly into a utility facility at the Voronezh substation. A massive fire erupted, its orange glow visible for miles. The diversion was complete. Within an hour, commanders in Belgorod and Voronezh were reporting to Moscow. The message was clear. Massive UAV attack repelled. Enemy achieved minor, insignificant successes. Situation under control. Every air defense crew in southern Russia was now on high alert, their radars scanning the skies, listening for the low. Slow thwack-thwack of a propeller. They never once looked north, and they weren't prepared for the shriek of a jet. At 0240 local time, on November 9th, 2025, as the diversion in Belgorod was consuming Russia's reserve interceptors, the real attack began. 150 kilometers to the north, the Kalino Airbase in Kursk Oblast was silent. Home to the Russian 14th Guards Fighter Aviation Regiment, its tarmac was lined with 50 million Su-30SM fighter jets. The base was a critical node, and it was protected by what Russia considered an impenetrable bubble, an S-400 Triumf air defense system. The Russian S-400 is not just a missile launcher. It's a networked area denial weapon. Its heart is the 92N6E gravestone radar, a sophisticated X-band phased array system capable of tracking 100 targets simultaneously, from ballistic missiles in near space to stealth fighters 400 kilometers away. At 0241, the 92N6E operator's screen lit up, not with a swarm of slow-moving propellers, but with 12 small, fast-moving contacts. They were Ukrainian Peklo jet-powered drones, flying at 400 kilometers per hour, just 50 meters above the treetops. The Russian S-400 crew acquired the targets. Two 48N6DM missiles, each worth $2 million, erupted from their vertical launch tubes. They were hypersonic, designed to swat fighters from the sky at Mach 6. But this is where the Ukrainian plan exploited physics. As the first missile seeker went active, the lead Peklo drone executed a simple, pre-programmed command. It turned 90 degrees, flying perfectly perpendicular to the 92N6E radar beam. This maneuver exploited a fundamental weakness of all pulse Doppler radars, the Doppler Notch. To the S-400's multi-billion ruble computer, the $300,000 drone, moving at 400 kilometers per hour, had just become a tree. The system's track file on the target instantly broke. The $2 million Russian missile, suddenly chasing a target that no longer existed, lost lock and self-destructed. The Russian commander, seeing the failure, ordered a switch in tactics. The S-400 launched a second set of missiles, this time using a track-via-missile mode, relying on the missile's own onboard radar to find the target. But the Ukrainian Peklo drones had another trick. As the new missiles approached, the drone's tiny electronic warfare pods activated. These were not crude noise jammers. They were sophisticated digital radio frequency memory, DRFM jammers. A DRFM system is a digital parrot. It works by capturing the enemy radar pulse as it arrives. It stores that pulse in memory, digitally manipulates it, and then retransmits it fractions of a second later, often multiple times. The Russian missile seeker was suddenly overwhelmed. It was pinging one drone, but it was receiving dozens of identical valid returns. The DRFM was creating a phantom army of ghost targets, all appearing to be in slightly different locations. The missile's guidance computer, unable to distinguish the real drone from its digital copies, calculated an intercept point in the empty air between them. The missiles detonated harmlessly, their proximity fuses triggered by empty space. The S-400 commander had now burned through 8 million and hadn't hit a single thing. His entire screen was a mess of ground clutter from the low-flying drones and ghost images from their jammers. His powerful 92N6E radar, the Eye of God, was forced to gate low, staring at the treetops. Its full processing power dedicated to solving this impossible Ukrainian drone problem. The Russian crew was being forced to look away, to look down. And that's when the real hammer fell. At 02:47 on November 9th, high in the stratosphere, appearing from nowhere on the radar's ceiling, 7 new contacts materialized. They were designated ballistic. They were plunging at Mach 3. The Russian S-400 commander in the Kalino bunker faced an impossible choice. His 100 million 92N6E gravestone radar was gated low, its full processing power dedicated to deconflicting the ghost images from the 12 Ukrainian Peklo drones skimming the treetops. His entire defense screen was a mess of low-altitude clutter, and now, 7 new ballistic contacts were plunging from the stratosphere. This was the fatal flaw the Ukrainian plan had been designed to exploit. A phased array radar, even one as advanced as the 92N6E, is bound by physics. It cannot look in 2 places at once. It cannot simultaneously track low altitude, maneuvering swarm targets and high altitude. Mach 3 ballistic missiles. The Russian crew was staring at the ground while death came from the heavens. It was too late. From detection to impact was less than 40 seconds. The base's last line of defense, 2 Russian Pantsir S-1 systems, swiveled their turrets upward. Their own radars acquired the plunging contacts. But the weapons plunging toward them were not simple missiles. They were 7 Ukrainian-operated ATACMS M39 Block Y missiles. The M39 is not a conventional warhead designed to create one large explosion. It is a cluster weapon, a payload delivery system. At 3,000 feet, the missile's warheads split open. They released 950 M74 bomblets each. In less than 3 seconds, 6,650 individual grenade-sized submunitions were raining down on the Kalino airbase. This wasn't an explosion. It was a hailstorm of tungsten and steel. The Russian Pantsir crews didn't know what to shoot at. Their 30mm cannons, firing 5,000 rounds per minute, were spraying lead into a cloud that now covered 6 football fields. They were trying to shoot down rain. It was completely useless. The attack was two-pronged. The hammer and the scalpel. The hammer, ATACMS. At 02:48 November 9th, the 6,650 bomblets arrived. They weren't designed to destroy bunkers. They were designed to shred soft targets. The Russian S-400's brawn, its 5P-85 SM-2 launchers, were shredded. The bomblets pierced the thin-skinned 48N6DM missiles still sitting in their launch tubes. Solid rocket fuel and high explosives cooked off, creating a secondary explosion chain reaction that ripped the entire launch site apart. On the tarmac, the bomblets rained down on the 14th Guards prized Su-30SMs. The M74 bomblets are dual-purpose, containing both a shaped charge to pierce light armor and a fragmentation casing. They punched through canopies, tore through hydraulic lines, and shredded composite wing surfaces. A $50 million Russian fighter jet, designed to win any dogfight, was neutralized on the ground by a submunition that cost less than a dinner. The Scalpel, Peklo drones. At the exact same moment, the ATACMS bomblets began to fall. The Russian air defense network went into total chaos. The surviving Peklo drones, their distraction job complete, accelerated. Their real job was just beginning. As the Pantsir crews were firing up at the rain, 4 of the jet-powered drones dove sideways. Accelerating to 500 kilometers per hour, they flew under the radar, their targets locked. The 92N6E gravestone radar cabin itself. The S-400's brain. At 02:49, the first Peklo's 20-kilo shaped charge warhead detonated against the radar's antenna array. A shaped charge works by focusing its entire explosive force into a single point, creating a superheated jet of molten copper moving at 8 kilometers per second. This jet punched through the cabin's protective shell and instantly vaporized the delicate electronics inside. It created plasma channels between circuits that should never connect, turning the S-400's multi-million-dollar brain into smoking slag. The cascade failure was instantaneous. The brain, the 92N6E radar, was dead. The brawn, the 5P-85 SM-2 launchers, were burning. The assets, the Su-30SM jets, were shredded. In 90 seconds, the untouchable fortress at Kalino hadn't just been touched. It had been dismantled. The entire engagement at Kalino, from the first ballistic missile detection to the destruction of the 92N6E radar, lasted 94 seconds. By Era 2:50 local time on November 9th, the airbase was silent, save for the sound of burning rocket fuel and the pop, pop, pop of M74 bomblets cooking off. The surviving Ukrainian Peklo drones, their mission complete, turned south and dove into the ground, their autonomous programming ensuring no technology would be recovered. The cascade failure was absolute. This wasn't just a destroyed battery. It was a decapitation. The Russian S-400 Triumf is a networked system. Its launchers are the brawn, but they are useless without the brain, the 92N6E radar, to tell them where to look. With that radar cabin now a molten ruin, the remaining launchers on the site, even if undamaged, were blind. They had become $100 million lawn ornaments. The consequences rippled outward. The Kalino S-400 battery wasn't just protecting the airbase. It was the primary area denial weapon protecting the entire Kursk Oblast and the northern approach to Belgorod. Its destruction opened a 400-kilometer-wide hole in Russia's integrated air defense network. But the most immediate loss was the 14th Guards Fighter Aviation Regiment. At dawn on November 10th, Russian ground crews emerged to a scene of total devastation. 5 Su-30SMs were confirmed destroyed. Their fuselages blackened and their landing gear collapsed. 8 more were heavily damaged, perforated by shrapnel. Their delicate engines, avionics, and hydraulic systems shredded. The runway itself was so cratered by bomblets that it would be unusable for weeks. Ukraine had used the 44 Palyanitsia propeller drones as a $660,000 diversion. They had used the 12 Peklo jet drones as a $3.6 million scalpel to blind the S-400. They had used the 7 ATACMS M39 missiles as the hammer. The total cost for Ukraine was perhaps $15 million. The cost for Russia, one of their most advanced S-400 batteries, an entire squadron of their best fighter jets, and the strategic air defense of their southern flank. A loss measured in the billions. This wasn't warfare. It was economics with explosives. That same morning, Russia's Ministry of Defense issued a press release. It announced that their heroic air defense forces had successfully repelled a large-scale Ukrainian drone attack on the Belgorod and Voronezh regions, noting that all targets were intercepted. And damage was minor. They never mentioned Kursk.